Take her bag, my brother said, stepping toward my daughter like she was a suspect in a lineup. It's in there. I know it is. Emma froze. She was 9 years old, still wearing her church dress, still holding the little beaded purse she'd picked out herself at Target 2 weeks ago. She looked up at me with those wide brown eyes, and I saw at that flicker of confusion that children get when the adult world suddenly turns on them without warning. Marcus. My voice was low. Stop. He didn't stop. He reached out and pulled the bag from her hands before I could move. My mother stood in the kitchen doorway with her arms crossed. My father sat at the dining room table, staring at the centerpiece, like it had something important written on it. Nobody moved. Marcus unzipped the little purse and turned it upside down over the coffee table. Lip gloss, a folded dollar bill, a stick of gum, a friendship bracelet Emma had made at school, and then a dull gleam of gold against the wood. My grandmother's ring. Emma shook her head. I didn't put that there. Marcus, I said again, louder now. She didn't take that. He looked at me with an expression I had never seen on his face before. Calm, rehearsed, patient in the way that people are patient when they've already decided how the story ends. Sarah, he said. It was in her bag. My name is Sarah Calloway. I'm 32 years old. I work night shifts at Mercy General, 3 days a week, so I can be home for Emma every morning. Her father, Derek, passed away from a cardiac event 18 months ago. He was 34. We hadn't expected it. Nobody ever does. Since Derek died, it had just been the two of us. Emma and me in our little house on Crestfield Lane, figuring out how to be a family of two when we used to be three. She was doing well, all things considered. Her teacher told me at the last parent conference that Emma was one of the most emotionally mature kids in her class. That she helped other kids when they were sad. That she had a good heart. She had a good heart. That part mattered more than anything else that came after. My grandmother, Nana Ruth, passed away 11 weeks before this day. She left behind a 2-bedroom house, a savings account with a little over $90,000, and a ring that had been in our family for 3 generations, a gold band with a small cluster of diamonds that Nana Ruth wore every single day until the arthritis made it too painful. She kept it in a ceramic dish on her dresser after that. I had seen it there my entire childhood. Her will, the one she had filed with her attorney, divided everything equally between her 2 grandchildren, me and Marcus. 50-50. But Marcus had been managing Nana Ruth's finances for the last 2 years of her life. And in the 3 weeks following her funeral, he had become very, very interested in making sure nobody looked too closely at her accounts. I didn't know all of that yet. Not that afternoon in my parents' living room. Not when my daughter stood with her hands at her sides, shaking, while my brother held up that ring like evidence. But I was about to find out. My mother finally spoke. Emma, sweetheart. Her voice was soft in the way that felt more like a warning than a comfort. Did you take Nana Ruth's ring from the box when we were upstairs? No. Emma's voice was barely a whisper. I was downstairs the whole time. I was watching cartoons with Grandpa. My father cleared his throat. Still didn't look up. Dad, I said. You were with her. Tell them. He shifted in his chair. I had my eyes closed for a bit. I might have dozed off. I stared at him. Something in my chest cracked along a fault line that had been there for years. My brother set the ring on the table. Look, Sarah. Nobody's calling Emma a bad kid. Kids take things sometimes. They don't fully understand. She's 9, I said. She knows exactly what taking something means, and she didn't do it. Then how did it get in her bag? I didn't have an answer for that yet. But the way he said it too smooth, too ready, something cold settled into my stomach. My mother stepped forward. Let's just not make this a whole thing. I'll hold on to the ring. We'll move on. Nobody gets in trouble. Move on? I picked up Emma's bag from the table. You want to move on after accusing my 9-year-old of stealing from a dead woman? Sarah. My father's voice was a flat warning. She's a child. My voice broke on the last word, and I hated it. I hated that it broke. She just lost her father a year and a half ago, and you're going to stand there and let him do this? Marcus rubbed the back of his neck. I'm just saying what I saw. Then you saw wrong. I took Emma's hand, and we walked out. She didn't cry until we were in the car, and when she did, it was the quiet kind, not dramatic, not loud, just tears running down her face while she stared out the passenger window at the passing houses. "Mama," she said. "Am I in trouble?" "No, baby." I kept my eyes on the road. "You are not in trouble. Did I do something bad without knowing?" "No." "Then why did Uncle Marcus?" "Uncle Marcus was wrong." I squeezed her hand. "And I'm going to prove it. I didn't sleep that night." I lay in the dark, listening to Emma's quiet breathing through the baby monitor I still kept in her room. A habit left over from her toddler years that I had never managed to stop, and I replayed the afternoon over and over. The way Marcus had moved toward her bag. The way my parents had gone quiet. The way my father had looked at the centerpiece. By 4 in the morning, I was sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop open. I knew a few things. I knew Emma had not been upstairs. I knew that ring had been in the ceramic dish in Nana Ruth's old bedroom, which my mother had kept exactly as it was. I knew my brother had been up there for almost 20 minutes alone before the rest of us came inside after the garden walk. And I knew one more thing. Something I had filed away and not examined too closely because grief makes you give people the benefit of the doubt. 6 weeks ago, sorting through Nana Ruth's mail that had been forwarded to my parents' house, I had found a letter from a financial services company I didn't recognize. It was addressed to Nana Ruth, but had been opened and then loosely resealed, the flap crooked. I had set it on the kitchen counter and forgotten about it. But I remembered the account number printed at the top. I remembered it because it wasn't her regular bank. I pulled up my emails and searched until I found the photo I had taken of it back then, a habit from nursing, documenting everything, and I wrote down the account number on a notepad. Then I picked up my phone and texted my cousin Diane, who had worked in estate law for 11 years. "I need to talk to you. It's about Nana Ruth's estate and about Marcus. Can we meet tomorrow?" She responded at 6:45 in the morning. "I was wondering when you'd call." Diane met me at a coffee shop on Marsden Street, a place my brother never went because he considered it too far from his side of town. She was already there when I arrived, 2 coffees on the table, her reading glasses pushed up on her head. I laid out everything I had. The letter, the account number, the fact that Marcus had been alone in that room, the way the ring had appeared in Emma's bag, the way my parents had chosen not to see what was right in front of them. Diane stirred her coffee slowly. "Sarah, has Marcus ever shown you a copy of Nana Ruth's amended will?" I looked at her. "Amended?" 2 months before she passed. "Marcus told your parents that she wanted to change her will. He said she wanted to leave the house to him outright in exchange for the care he'd been giving her. He had a document. Your parents signed it as witnesses." The coffee went cold in my hands. "I never saw that," I said. "No," Diane said. "You wouldn't have. You were working nights. Is it legal?" "If it was filed with her attorney." Her attorney, the one who drafted the original will, never saw an amendment. I know because I called him after Marcus mentioned it at the reading. He said he had no record of any changes. The document Marcus presented was filed with a different notary, one I've never heard of in connection with Ruth's estate. I set down my cup. He forged it. Diane looked at me carefully. "I'm not saying that. I'm saying the paperwork doesn't match. And I think a forensic document examiner would find that very interesting." "And the account number?" She took the notepad I slid across the table. She looked at it for a long moment. "Give me 2 days." I drove home with a feeling I hadn't had since the weeks after Derek died, that specific kind of grief that comes not from losing someone but from seeing clearly, for the first time, something you had been not looking at for a very long time. My brother had been stealing from our grandmother. Slowly, quietly, while she was still alive. And now that she was gone, he needed the house and the inheritance to cover what he had taken. And when I had started asking questions about the estate, asking about timelines and accounts, and why everything was taking so long to settle, he had decided he needed to discredit me. And he had used my daughter to do it. I pulled into the driveway, sat in the car for a full minute before going inside. Emma was at the kitchen table doing her homework. She looked up when I came in and gave me a small, uncertain smile, the kind of smile kids give when they're trying to gauge your mood before committing to their own. "Hi, Mama." "Hi, baby." I kissed the top of her head and sat across from her. How was school? Okay. Jalen was being annoying at lunch, but then he apologized. She looked back down at her worksheet. Mama? Is Grandma mad at me? I looked at my daughter, her small shoulders, her careful handwriting, the little concentration line between her brows that she had inherited from her father. No, I said. Grandma is not mad at you. Nothing that happened yesterday was your fault. Do you understand me? She nodded, but not fully. Kids carry things in ways adults don't notice until later. Do you promise? She asked without looking up. I promise, I said, and I'm going to make sure everybody knows the truth. She nodded again, and this time she leaned slightly in my direction, just the smallest drift of her shoulder toward me, like a plant turning toward light. Diane called on a Thursday evening while Emma was in the bath. The account number you gave me is a secondary account that was opened in Ruth's name 18 months ago. Marcus is listed as cosigner with power of attorney. Since her passing, there have been 11 transfers out of that account. Total withdrawn, $63,000. I sat down on the stairs. The will amendment, she continued, was signed by a notary whose license was suspended 8 months ago, which means any document she certified after that date is invalid in this state. Diane, there's more. Marcus has a second mortgage on his house that he took out 14 months ago. The amount matches almost exactly what was moved out of Ruth's account in the first 6 months. I exhaled slowly. He needed the house because he needed the asset to cover what he'd already stolen. And he needed you discredited so you'd stop asking questions about the estate timeline. If Emma had been formally accused of taking that ring, if there had been any kind of police report, any suggestion that you were raising a child with problems, your credibility as a claimant to the estate goes sideways. It creates noise. It creates doubt. He used a 9-year-old girl as a distraction. Silence on the line. I have everything documented, Diane said. Account records, the notary suspension date, the mortgage timeline. I also spoke with Ruth's neighbor, Mrs. Patel. She told me that in the last 6 months of Ruth's life, Marcus visited several times with documents for her to sign. She said Ruth seemed confused during at least 2 of those visits. She mentioned it to her at the time, but Ruth waved it off. Vulnerable adult exploitation, I said. It was a phrase I knew from work, from the pamphlets in the hospital waiting rooms, from the training modules we did every year. I had never applied it to my own family. That's what it looks like, Diane said quietly. I think you need to bring this to the county sheriff's office. Estate fraud, financial exploitation, and the document forgery. And I think you should bring a family law attorney with you when you go. I thanked her, went upstairs, finished Emma's bedtime routine. I read her 2 chapters of her book, turned off the lamp, sat in the dark at the edge of her bed listening to her breathe until I was sure she was asleep. Then I went downstairs and I started making calls. The attorney I found was a woman named Patricia Okafor, who had been practicing family and estate law in the county for 19 years. She had short, natural hair and the kind of stillness in her face that told you she had heard worse than whatever you were about to say. I sat across from her and laid down everything: the accounts, the timeline, the forged will, the ring in Emma's bag. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she looked at her notes. The financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult is a felony in this state, she said. Forgery of a testamentary document carries up to 10 years. What he did with the ring, planting evidence to discredit you as an heir, that's tampering and obstruction, potentially, depending on what we can prove about intent. He used my daughter, I said. Yes. She looked at me directly. And that matters. Courts take a very dim view of using a child as a tool. It speaks to character in a way that's hard to walk back. She filed with the county sheriff's office the following Monday. The forensic accountant she brought in confirmed everything Diane had found and added several more transactions. Handwriting analysis on the amended will found inconsistencies in Nana Ruth's signature consistent with guided or forced signing. Mrs. Patel gave a formal statement. Ruth's primary care physician provided records showing a diagnosis of mild cognitive decline that had been documented in the last year of her life, a fact Marcus had never disclosed to the rest of the family. My parents were notified by the sheriff's office on a Wednesday. My mother called me 20 minutes later, crying so hard I could barely understand her. Sarah, please. Please just talk to him first. He's your brother. Whatever happened, we can figure this out inside the family." I listened to her cry. I thought about Emma sitting at that coffee table, turning her beaded purse upside down, her face confused and ashamed in a way that a 9-year-old's face should never be. "You watched him do it." "Mom," I said. My voice was steadier than I expected. "You stood in that doorway, and you let him dump her bag out on the table. And when I looked at Dad, he looked away. We didn't know. You knew something. You've known something for months. Every time I asked about the estate timeline and you changed the subject. Every time I mentioned the amended will and you said Marcus was handling it." I stopped, took a breath. "I am not doing this to hurt you. I am doing this because he stole from Nana Ruth while she was alive and confused and trusting him. And then he tried to make my daughter look like a thief to cover it up." Silence on the line. And then, very quietly, my mother said something I hadn't expected. I knew the signature didn't look right. On the amendment. I didn't want to say anything because she stopped. "Because he's your son." She didn't answer. She didn't have to. "He's my brother," I said. And I still made the call. Marcus was arrested on a Friday morning. The charges were financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, forgery of a testamentary document, and wire fraud. His attorney negotiated a preliminary hearing for the following month. I found out through Diane, not through my parents. I was standing in the hospital parking lot after a night shift, still in my scrubs, when she texted me. I stood there in the gray morning light, and I felt not triumph, not relief, exactly something quieter. Something that felt like a knot slowly loosening in a muscle I had held tense for months without realizing it. I drove home. Emma was up, eating cereal at the kitchen counter, her backpack already by the door. "Morning, Mama." She studied my face the way she always did. "You okay?" "Yeah, baby." I sat on the stool next to her and stole a piece of her toast. "I think I'm actually okay." She leaned against my arm. "Did you fix it?" I looked at her. "What do you mean?" "You said you were going to prove the truth, did you?" I wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "Yeah, I did." She nodded like this confirmed something she had already decided. Then she went back to her cereal. 2 days after the arrest, my father came to my door alone. No call ahead, no text. Just his car in the driveway, and his knock at the door. 3 slow raps that I recognized from childhood. I opened it. He stood on the porch with his hands in his jacket pockets, looking older than I had noticed recently, looking like a man who had spent the last 72 hours not sleeping. "I want to talk to Emma," he said. "If she'll let me." I looked at him for a long moment. Then I called her from the living room and stepped back. She came to the door and stood beside me, looking up at him. "Emmy," his voice was rough. He crouched down so he was at her level, and I saw his eyes go glassy. "I should have said something that day, when Marcus." He stopped. "I should have said that you were with me the whole time, and I know you didn't take anything. I should have said it right then, and I didn't, and I am sorry. That was wrong of me." Emma looked at him for a long moment with that serious face she had inherited from her father. Then she stepped forward and hugged him around the neck, and he held on to her like she had offered him something he hadn't earned but was too tired to refuse. I looked away. Out at the yard, the maple tree, the quiet street. I wasn't ready to forgive everyone yet. I knew that. Some of it would take longer. Some of it I was still figuring out. But watching my father hold my daughter, watching her small hands pat his back with a kindness that 9-year-olds manage more easily than adults, I thought about something Derek used to say. That the hardest thing and the right thing are almost always the same thing. I used to argue with him about that. I didn't anymore. The estate proceedings took several months to resolve. Patricia was precise and methodical, the way the best attorneys are not dramatic, just thorough. The amended will was declared invalid. The original will was reinstated. The $63,000 that had been moved out of Nana Ruth's secondary account was ordered to be repaid to the estate before any distribution. Marcus's attorney tried to negotiate the criminal charges down to a single misdemeanor. The DA declined. He took a plea on 2 of the 3 charges, financial exploitation and document forgery, and received 30 months, with the possibility of parole after 14. I sat in the courtroom for the plea hearing. Marcus was brought in wearing a gray suit that was a size too large, or maybe he had just gotten smaller. He didn't look at me when he came in. He looked at my parents, who were sitting 2 rows ahead of me, my mother with a tissue in her hand, my father staring at the same invisible point he always found when he didn't want to see what was in front of him. The judge read the charges. Marcus said guilty. Then guilty again. The word left his mouth both times like something he had practiced until it stopped meaning anything. Afterward, in the hallway outside the courtroom, my mother caught my arm. "I don't know how to do this," she said. She meant all of it: her son in custody, the family pulled open, the grandmother she had loved and apparently not protected well enough. "I don't either," I said. "We just do it anyway." She squeezed my arm once, then let go. I walked out of the courthouse into the afternoon. Patricia was beside me, already checking her phone, already moving to the next thing. "The estate distribution will be finalized in about 6 weeks," she said. "Your half of the house value, once it sells, plus half of the remaining account balance. I'll send you the updated numbers by end of week." I thanked her. She shook my hand and walked toward her car with the brisk certainty of someone who had done this 1,000 times and would do it 1,000 more. I sat in my own car for a while without starting it. Watched people come in and out of the courthouse. A young couple with a stroller, a man in a delivery uniform, 2 teenagers sitting on the steps eating sandwiches like the world was entirely ordinary. I thought about the ring. After the case was opened, detectives had pulled security footage from my parents' house. They had a doorbell camera that recorded inside the hallway, something I hadn't known about. The footage showed Marcus entering Nana Ruth's old bedroom alone. 19 minutes. When he came back downstairs, his left hand was in his jacket pocket. It never came out until he was standing over Emma's bag. The ring had belonged to our great-grandmother. It had passed to Nana Ruth on her wedding day. In the original will, Ruth had left it to me specifically as separate bequest outside the estate division. I think Marcus had known that. I think that was why he chose it. Patricia had it returned to me after the evidence was processed. It sat now in a small velvet box on my dresser, next to the framed photo of Derek from our first camping trip, the one where he was laughing at something off camera, completely unguarded, completely himself. That night, I helped Emma with a school project about family history. She wanted to include Nana Ruth. "What was she like?" Emma asked, her pencil hovering over the paper. "She was tough," I said. "And fair. She didn't let people take things that weren't theirs." Emma wrote something down. Then she looked up. "Mama? Is the ring safe now?" "It is," I said. "Nobody's going to take it." She nodded and went back to her paper. I watched her write her small, careful letters, the tip of her tongue between her teeth, the way she always did when she was concentrating, and I felt something settle in me that had been unsettled for a long time. Not everything was fixed. The family was different now, quieter, still finding its edges. My mother and I talked on the phone every few days, cautiously, like people who have been in a car accident together and are still checking each other for injuries. My father came for dinner every other Sunday and helped Emma with her Lego sets and never mentioned Marcus's name. Some things take longer. Some things take years. Some things you carry differently depending on the season. But Emma slept well. She stopped asking if she was in trouble. She started bringing friends home after school again, and I would hear them laughing in her room, loud, uncomplicated, running down the hallway kind of laughter that filled the house the way laughter is supposed to. That mattered more than anything else. More than the estate, more than the verdict, more than the ring in its velvet box. A few weeks after the hearing, I went back to Patricia's office to sign the final estate documents. There was a form to acknowledge receipt of the specific bequest, the ring. I signed it, dated it, slid it back across the desk. Patricia looked at it. Then at me. "What will you do with it?" I thought about it for a moment. "Keep it," I said. "For Emma, eventually. When she's ready." Patricia nodded once. The way she always nodded, like she had already considered this possibility and found it acceptable. I drove home through the afternoon light. The leaves were turning early this year, orange and copper along Marsden Street, the kind of fall day that made the air smell like wood smoke and something finishing. I had a night shift in 4 hours. There was laundry in the dryer and a permission slip on the fridge and a whole ordinary life running on its tracks, asking nothing dramatic of me. Just showing up, just doing the next thing. I pulled into the driveway and sat for a moment, hands still on the wheel. Derek used to say the hardest thing and the right thing are almost always the same thing. I used to argue with him about that. I thought it was too simple, too clean. But sitting there in the driveway with the maple tree throwing shadows across the hood and Emma's bike leaned against the porch, I finally understood what he meant. Not that the right thing is easy once you do it, but that afterward, after the hard part, you stop carrying it the same way. It becomes something else, something lighter. The front door opened. Emma leaned out. "Mama, can we make soup tonight? I want the one with the little pasta." "Yeah," I called back. "Go wash your hands." She disappeared inside. I got out of the car, picked a stray leaf off the windshield, and walked up the steps. The house was warm. It smelled like the candle she had lit Apple, her current favorite, and something else underneath it, something harder to name. Steadiness. Maybe. The specific quiet of a place that has been through something and is still standing. I hung up my jacket. "Okay," I said. "Let's make soup."